Hey, friends on Facebook Live, you're tuning in. We're going to start live in about a minute, so you hear audio then. There's nothing wrong with Facebook or your computer. We'll be coming up live in about a minute. Thanks for tuning in.
You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean...
Watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles. And you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of the Resistance. Tuesday, October 23rd. We're live for the next 3 hours. I'm Dean Obeidallah. Hope to be your MBFF. I'm on Twitter, at Dean Obeidallah, where you can watch the live stream if you want of the open right now. Later in the studio, we'll have Congressman Ro Khanna from California. He's in New York. He'll be in studio at the bottom of the hour. You can watch that. And Danny Savalas in the third hour will be here. Or Facebook.com/Dean of Radio. Or drop me an email. Questions, comments, whatever. Dean@deanofradio.com. 14 days. Can you believe it? In 2 weeks from today, we will be sitting here counting down the closing of certain polls across this nation. And we have a chance in 14 days to do something that many countries don't, where they don't have a democracy or they don't have midterm elections. We have a chance to say no to Donald Trump normalizing sexism and racism and lies and corruption. We have that chance. We have that power. It is in our hands to do that. And I have to be honest, some of the polls are getting closer. But that's fine. We are going to win because we're going to come out. And all we need are 23 House seats. And I would love to take 2 Senate seats. But what the GOP are not talking about, and we are, the governor's races. And we are leading in Florida consistently. Michigan, Wisconsin, we're going to flip. Georgia is neck and neck. We might take that. Maybe Ben Jealous and Maryland flips that. New Mexico, it's going to go from Susan Martinez to a Democrat. We might pick up, if the polls stay where they are, we pick 4 or 5 up. We've gone, right now it's 32 Republicans to 18 Democratic governors. We pick up 5. We're almost at 50-50 in this nation. And that is so important going into the decade, the top of the decade, because there's the census and there'll be redistricting. So things are looking good. If we come out and vote, you have the power. It's in your hands. We're going to talk more about that today. A lot more in the second hour. First, here's Seth Meyers last night talking about how suddenly now Donald Trump and Ted Cruz are BFFs. Here's clip number 1.
President Trump told reporters today that he gets along well with Senator Ted Cruz, saying, quote, "He's not lying, Ted, anymore. He's beautiful, Ted." Dude, if that's beautiful, Ted, then you're lying, Donald.
He is lying, Donald. We know that. And here's one more quick joke from Colbert. And I love when comedians, we saw Trevor Noah did it and Seth Meyers other times, talk about substantive political issues where people might not have seen it in the news, especially younger people who watch some of these shows and people who like entertainment. But here is Colbert talking about a very serious issue, which is the Trump administration's cruel rollback on the definition of transgender Americans and trying to roll back on protections for them. So here's clip number 2.
There's more random cruelty from the Trump administration coming down the pike. This time, they spun the wheel of discrimination and they landed on transgender, because we've just learned of a new Trump plan in which they would narrowly define gender as a biological condition determined by genitalia at birth, which means that transgender people could be defined out of existence. You can't just redefine something to make it go away. I learned that the hard way when I tried to convince everyone in high school my nickname Skid Mark was because of all the cool driving moves I did. The Trump administration the Trump administration is thinking about writing new guidelines that say gender should be defined, quote, on a biological basis that is clear, grounded in science. Oh, now you care about science. Wow, how convenient. Yeah.
What a great joke. The idea of Donald Trump and Mike Pence and the Christian right, which denies climate change and says science doesn't matter there. Now they're trying to play this game about science. We'll talk about this more with Congressman Khanna, but their proposed regulations, what they're doing, and it's proposed right now, the Trump administration wants to define a person's sex by the gender you're born. And there's no chance for any change. They deem it immutable, biological trait. And as a practical matter, and that's what really matters, not these words, but practically, how does it impact human beings? Well, here's how. The new definition would essentially eradicate federal government recognition of the estimated 1.4 million Americans who opted to view themselves and who say they are transgender Americans. Reminder, this is just the latest onslaught by the Trump administration. Remember the lie during the GOP convention? Donald Trump, I will be the best president for the LBTJ, whatever. It was like he was reading an eye chart. He read it so slowly and he got it wrong. The Trump administration has tried to ban transgender Americans who bravely want to serve in our military, something Donald Trump, the coward draft dodger, didn't do. They've also tried to challenge legally civil rights protections for transgender Americans. And several agencies in the Trump administration have withdrawn Obama-era policies that recognize gender identity in schools, in prisons, and in homeless shelters. This is what we're dealing with. And this cruelty, and I love the fact that Colbert called it the latest act of random cruelty. And I keep bringing this up. The common denominator in so much of what Trump is about, his currency is this cruelty. That's what he is about. He's a cruel person. Different things, there's white supremacy involved. I get it. Bigotry. But so much of it comes from a place of being mean and cruel to everyone who doesn't look like him, pray like him, love like him, or think like him. Cruel, 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 because he has no empathy and no compassion. And he has now made evangelical Christians enjoy and glorify cruelty. Because this rollback on protections for transgender Americans is simply to make the Christian right happy. Because in their view, they lost on marriage equality, so the least they can do is bully and harass and demonize transgender Americans. This is what they're about. And then last night we had something, and because we have a lot of guests tonight, I'm going to have a shorter monologue. I'll take some calls, and Congressman Khan will be with us for a little bit. He might take some calls. Next hour we'll have a lot of time for calls, but he's already here. Well, we'll get him in here a little early. Last night at Donald Trump's rally, Donald Trump declared himself a nationalist. He just left out the word white. That's all. And today, Congressman Greg Meeks, a Democrat from New York, was on with Wolf Blitzer. And I want to play Greg Meeks, who really responds to this nationalist new line by Donald Trump well. And it starts with a clip of Trump saying the line from the rally, and then Wolf Blitzer cuts to Congressman Meeks. Let's hear clip number 3.
You know, they have a word. It sort of became old-fashioned. It's called a nationalist. And I say, really, we're not supposed to use that word. You know what I am? I'm a nationalist, okay? I'm a nationalist.
All right, so what's your reaction to that, Congressman?
My first reaction to that is the synonym to a nationalist is a chauvinist. And that apparently is what this president is. And to say that we are better than, or, it reminds me of the kinds of words that came from people like Hitler, who thought that in Germany he was a nationalist, and the kinds of people that this president seems to like, and those who are repressive dictators, those are the individuals that generally use that kind of phrase and those kinds of words.
Absolutely right. And then somehow Donald Trump's now saying he doesn't know what nationalist meant, didn't know the connotations. I thought Donald Trump went to the best schools. I thought he was the smartest guy in the world. He doesn't know what this is. Steve Bannon talked about nationalism all the time. All Steve Bannon left out was the word white, but we knew what Steve Bannon was about. We know what Donald Trump is about. Patriotism, by the way, is not nationalism, and I mean that by dictionary definition. Patriotism means love or devotion for one's country. Nationalism is different. Nationalism, by Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is the idea of a feeling of cultural superiority. That's what it's about. And as Merriam-Webster's dictionary says here, in the U.S., usage of nationalism is now perhaps the most frequently associated with white nationalism and has considerably negative connotations. And it goes on to talk about Nazism and white supremacy, white nationalism. And let's be adults. Let's not play games, because I don't do the faux outrage. I don't play games about, sometimes Trump has said words that weren't the best words, but you can interpret them differently. And some on our side gets a little crazy. This is not one of them. Donald Trump, when someone like him says, I'm a nationalist, in front of a crowd in the Deep South, after demonizing brown people, this is the same man who said there are very fine people on the side of white supremacists. A man who's talked about European identity and that Europe is destroyed by Muslims and brown people coming there. It's very clear the nationalism he means. It is the cultural superiority of his view of white European nationalism, and that everyone else is inferior. And this caravan of people just give Donald Trump an excuse to let his white nationalist flag fly. Donald Trump is a man who has retweeted during the campaign and as president white nationalists, white supremacists, a man who would not denounce David Duke until pushed and shamed by the media. And even then, he never tweeted David Duke's a loser. Anything the things he's called Elizabeth Warren or Hillary Clinton, never had that kind of passion in denouncing David Duke, Richard Spencer, or the other white nationalists out there. Let's not play games. Donald Trump is a white supremacist. There's no games to be played. We are adults. If you are supporting a white supremacist, that is your choice. This is America. You have the right to support, you have the right to join the Klan. As long as you do nothing violent, you can be in the Klan. That's life. But this is again a reminder of the stakes that we are 14 days out from. These are again the stakes. Do you want a president who is literally in front of our eyes normalizing white supremacy and white nationalism at the expense of everyone else who is not that, who is not white, Christian, male, straight? The transgender ban, this rollout, we're learning about it now a few days before the election. That's not happenstance. What other leader historically has demonized the minority faith, demonized the LGBT, demonized immigrants, blamed them, scapegoated them, and invoked nationalism? You don't need to be a genius to know who that is. I'm not going to say that name because there's a special place in hell for that regime. But Donald Trump plays on the same thing. I was just at an event last week. I talked about it on extremism. And I came back on the show and I said, after a day of being at this event on extremism, I learned one big takeaway. Donald Trump's plea to his base to get recruiters and to keep them passionately loving him is exactly the same as those who are white supremacist leaders and ISIS leaders and Al-Qaeda leaders. And it's very clear. They play one on grievance. Second, they appeal to your identity, either your religion or your race. Third, they promise you to be part of something bigger than yourself. Be something great. Finally, help me make America great. That is what Donald Trump is doing here. That's why the passion of his base, they might not even understand it because their love for him far exceeds any politician's. You know, George Soros, there was an explosive device found in his mailbox yesterday in one of his homes in New York. Was it sent by a Trump supporter? I'm not sure, but I can tell you the right continually gins up fear of George Soros. He is their way of mainstreaming anti-Semitism on a certain level, and that's part of it. So look, we get it. I could talk longer, you know me, and I want to hear from people for a little bit. Let's take a quick break. Come back. More of the Dean Obeidallah Show, 866-997-4748 right after this. Look, it's time the media start calling out Trump's false statements for what they are. Lies. Trump is a liar. And by the looks of it, he's lying every day and twice on Sundays.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.